Today, we are joined by Ryan Cochrane, an Olympic swimmer who represented Canada at two Olympic Games and was recently recognized as Victoria, BC's top-rated real estate agent. Ryan has been in Victoria and a resident for over 20 years and has a deep understanding of the Victoria market. He brings his competitive spirit and dedication to his real estate career in Victoria. Ryan will be sharing us his transition from Olympian into the world of real estate, how the Victoria market has grown and evolved over the years, and what he is in the market. Joining.
Absolutely. Happy to talk real estate.
Look forward to it. Yeah. So my first question, it's not every day you get to meet with an Olympian, and it's, something that very, very few can say, especially, medaling. Was that something growing up that you always wanted to pursue, being a swimmer?
It's a good question. I always like to tell the story that if you had asked me in school what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would have said Olympian. And then obviously the next question would have been like, oh, what sport? And I was terrible at everything. So I couldn't have told you at the time. Swimming was something I did for, well over 20 years. When you're a kid, you're passionate about the environment. When you're a parent, you want your kid to learn, how to manage their time, how to get up early, how to, all these things that I think create a successful kid. And so swimming was it's something I loved. And who knew that it would be 2 decades and traveling all over the world and being able to represent the country.
I guess the power of manifestation is a real thing for sure. And, being there representing your country, receiving that medal has to be a top highlight amongst your career. When you look back on your swimming career, aside from, the medals and the recognition, what are some of your favorite highlights looking back over the course of your swimming career there?
It's a great question. I was fortunate that I got to do sport well into my late 20s, and you have such a different appreciation than you do when you're a teenager. You don't really realize what it means to, be on that level and represent your city and your country. Standing on the Olympic podium was something I had always dreamed about for as long as I can remember. That's the pinnacle of why you do that as an athlete. But at the end of the day, being in a sporting community like Victoria, we have all these national teams. You're beside these other Olympians. The city cares. And when you start to travel, you appreciate that Victoria is the kind of biggest small city, and everyone is invested in you and they know what you're doing and they want the best for you. So being able to be an athlete for as long as I was and integrate into the community, I think it's just having those medals is fantastic. Singing the national anthem is amazing, but bringing those back to the community and giving back to that next generation and motivating them to have those big aspirations, I think is something I still think about today.
Very cool. And I'm sure everyone that you're talking to and encouraging is very appreciative of you giving back. Taylor kind of gives me little nags once in a while for letting me hang it up, but I did play some sports there in Victoria as well for the Victoria Royals. So smaller scale, not to the level that you had there at the Olympics, but Victoria is just a great city and they really got behind us. So I have very fond memories of being an athlete in that city as well. And, whether it was hanging up the skates or moving on from swimming, it's that day that comes and you decide, that was that and moving on to the next chapter of your life. It's a hard decision, but was real estate something that was always, top of mind, something you wanted to get into?
I've always loved real estate. Before, I've bought and sold real estate for quite a number of years now. And I was the person who was on Realtor.ca every single night doing my research, and I loved it. When I got out of sport, I really wanted to jump into real estate, but it's a full board job. It's 24/7. It's always changing. It's exciting, but it's just all the time. When you leave sport, you try to find some life balance in there. And
Yeah.
I worked for a software company for a little while, and it was just that kind of nagging thing in the back of my mind of you got to love what you're doing. You really do. Like you have to be invested in it. If you're going to put that time in, you can create the life outside of it. And I'm just so happy I, took that chance on real estate because it's been fantastic. I mean, it's such a great community here in Victoria. It's an exciting job. You get to work with the best people. And really, you find that passion and you're willing to run with it and create the life outside of it. So I should have known that this is where I was going to be, but sometimes it takes a little bit of a journey to get there.
Yeah, it's definitely cool to see the passion that you have for swimming in your career there, and also how that's just transitioned over into real estate as well. And you can sort of see the excitement overflowing there. And how was that transition over? I feel like for athletes, it's their identity growing up, and then one day it's no longer who they are, and it's making that switch over. What was that like, making the switch from real estate, or sorry, from swimming over into the real estate industry?
Sport teaches you all of these life skills, and you just need to be able to articulate it to yourself and utilize those things. And so I grew up with this whole swath of kids that weren't necessarily the best athletes, but they've all become successful at they and if you can learn those things and be self-sufficient and take that throughout all of your school and your university education and into a career, it takes you really far. And there's so many overlaps between running your own business and being self-employed and working with the public. And if you're a hard worker and you due diligent and you love what you're doing, but you have that work ethic to back it all up, it's nice to find a job where it is what you make it. I mean, anything in real estate, residential or commercial, it's about making those connections. And Victoria is such a connected place, which is, it's really beautiful. But then you have to have the work ethic behind it to, carry those things to the finish line. So sport teaches you all those things at a young age, and they're there. You just need to be able to capitalize on them.
And thanks for sharing a bit about your past there and in sport, and now hopefully dive a bit more into your new career in real estate. Tell us a bit about how you got involved with your brokerage, the agency, and what areas of Victoria you specifically service.
Well, when I started with the agency, we were a group of 5 agents at the time. I think the company it's based in California. At the time, I think we had kind of 10, 15 offices. We're up to 80 offices. You'll probably see 30 to 40 at least in the next 6 months. So the expansion over the last 10 years has been pretty huge. I chose the business. I love the ethos of collaboration. I mean, real estate is a competitive business, and I want to work with people who are going to want to not only want the best for you, but are going to push you to be a better version of yourself. And sport teaches you that. I mean, that's the lowest expectation when you're representing your country, is that everybody wants to be the best version of what they do. Real estate, you get a lot of different characters, a lot of people at different points in their lives, but the most important thing is really pushing each other to be better every day. So I love that. It's like we don't accept any kind of, we're all big personalities, I should say, but we don't accept anything other than pushing us all in the right direction. And so seeing how our company has grown has been really impressive. We're up to soon to be 3 offices in Victoria. We're up to kind of 35 agents, and you'll see that just keep growing, which I think is being able to be on the ground and then see where that has gone has been really cool.
That's very exciting, and I think a lot of people know or recognize the name and the brand from the Netflix series based out of the LA office. Any future there on a little Victoria segue of the team of the show?
This has come up a lot lately. I think there's some people who would love to be on a show and see a show. It's real estate is exciting. It doesn't matter the market. There's always some drama and some excitement and those big personalities. So who knows? But the Netflix show was an interesting one. There's always been this one degree of separation with the agency and pop culture. So that was obviously a little more recent and a little more extensive. But the company now has grown to 1,500, 1,800 agents. So you might see those things in different markets, but it's just really interesting to see us get into Europe, get into Central America, and just see where the company is going to grow over the next 10 years.
Within the Greater Victoria region, taking a look at the West Shore, Langford area, known as one of the fastest growing communities for quite some time within BC or within Canada. Talk about sort of that area and the growth it's seen. Do you do much work in that region?
Absolutely. I think most people in Victoria work in Langford, Colwood, the Western communities, because there is so much inventory there compared to the rest of the city. It's a really big dichotomy between these faster growing communities in Victoria and then our older, more historic centers. So, you get to around the Victoria core, places are developed. You are seeing a lot more development downtown, obviously the last kind of decade. But these Western communities, it's pretty amazing. It's twofold. The good thing is you get the density, you get the better price points. There's just more options for buyers, and you know that there's going to be that much inventory, coming down the pipeline any given month. The downside of that is some of the infrastructure in these fastest growing communities, or the sense of culture, is a little harder to put your thumb on. But I think they've done a good job in those communities at encouraging that growth, because we need that inventory in Victoria, but also doing their best to make sure that the city 10 years from now, 50 years from now, is still going to be a viable, enjoying one.
And in a location like Langford, for example, maybe just talk about what you're seeing in the different asset classes right now: townhomes, single things, days on the market, and price, if you can.
Yeah, Langford is the perfect example. Langford and parts of Colwood, is because there's so much inventory, that's seen the biggest drop in prices, since things slowed down just under a year ago now. With that, there is everything in those communities, from the single family homes to the condos. It's interesting because a lot of those single family homes are kind of townhouse condo alternatives. They've really put as much density as possible. The projects are usually approved in just a matter of a couple months, and they're really pushing for density. So you're not getting kind of substantial homes unless you're in the Bear Mountain region. There's mostly townhouse projects, quite a lot of condo projects. When there is that many options compared to the rest of the city, I would say you're seeing the price drop of 10, 15, 20% in some of those neighborhoods. But that'll probably flatten out, because with the rising costs of construction, that balance is an equilibrium that can't kind of continue along that path. So we are seeing a lot more rental projects for that reason. The rental market is very robust here in Victoria and all of Victoria. But the condo market, the housing market, everything in Langford is a little soft. But things are still transacting, and you're still probably seeing the most transactions in the city in those locations.
Would you still consider, downtown Victoria an affordable place to live? Comparing it to somewhere like Metro Vancouver, on a downtown condo price per square foot, do you still see affordability, or is that being pushed out into some of these secondary cities, or more northern within Vancouver Island?
It's a great question. What is affordable is always the hot button topic of the last couple of years. There's still good price per square foot in the downtown core. Developers like Chard and Abstract are building smaller units, but I think that's great because people are still able to be in the core for a better price point. You're usually still seeing $900, $950, even $1,000 a square foot for those smaller units. But for a lot of people, that's still within their range, that they can still be walkable to the core and have that lifestyle that they're looking for. But a lot of people are being pushed out if they need that second bedroom, or they need more than 500 square feet. If you have a family and wanting any resemblance of a yard, you're being pushed out, further on the peninsula, or usually out to Colwood and Langford. There is a number of people, if you're wanting that single family house, we have the odd option for under $1 million now, and we're seeing some better options come under that price point. But in reality, a lot of those buyers, if they can move out to Souk, Souk is a really fast growing community, or Up Island to any degree, they're choosing to do that because just price per square foot is definitely way better if you get out that way. The problem with Victoria is you get past Western communities and you're going Up Island or to Souk, and the infrastructure and the highways aren't great. If you go over the Malahat or into Souk, they're doing the best they can to beautify those areas and simplify the roadways, but they're just not great. So most people will still want to stay in that bubble to commute, and so that's why I think people are being pushed out to Colwood and Langford if they do want more space than, say, just a 1 or 2 bedroom condo.
And being born and raised in Victoria, you've been able to see firsthand some of these changes, this growth. You talked about some of the infrastructure in other places not being up to standard. In Victoria, do you feel they've done a really good job of putting proper infrastructure in place to accommodate all the new people that are moving there?
It's an interesting balance. So if we're talking Victoria core, big push for green initiatives. So, you know, lots of car share. We didn't have car share until probably about 5 years ago, which is a little crazy if you come from another major city. But car share, bike share, you know, protected bike lanes, more bus routes. Really a big push for that in the core. They're allowing developers to build projects with a lot less parking, but mandating all of these green initiatives. So you're seeing that in Victoria. Infrastructure, you know, you get outside the core. The biggest issue when it comes to driving in Victoria is the commute from Victoria to Langford or Colwood. With that density, a lot of those people are still coming in to the core. I mean, with COVID, we were still seeing issues with traffic, and that's how many more people were working from home at the time. So I do imagine in the next decade, we'll have to see some type of light rail boat option, just something to, you know, necessitate a better commute time for those people. Out in those communities, we have like the Bear Mountain Parkway, which has gone around the back of the mountain, which is, I mean, Bear Mountain over such or more than one way in and one way out, I should say. And so being able to kind of add those extra kind of major thoroughfares has been a big deal for these communities. So we are seeing that it is easing the traffic issues, but it's something that I think these municipalities are still going to have to fight for quite some time.
My very first summer job in the summer of 2007 was working on Bear Mountain on the golf course, cleaning golf clubs and working on the golf range, picking up golf balls. So I definitely remember the one way in, one way out, and it's crazy even just doing that drive, how much different the whole area and the neighborhood and the freeways coming in and out have evolved over the years. This channel is definitely focused towards investors and real estate investors. If someone came to you and said, "Hey, Ryan, I'm looking at maybe a pre-sale or something that's already built," from an investment standpoint, whether that's a condo, a duplex, maybe a townhome, what are some projects or some areas that you're excited about right now?
I think the downtown core has seen such a resurgence in the last 5 years. I lived downtown for over a decade, and you know, there was one or two cranes like the rest of the country. It was slow kind of in the early, you know, 2010s. Now, if you go downtown, it's like every single block has at least one or two new towers on it. And that's, you know, most of these projects are 2024 to 2026, and a really healthy mix of rental projects and pre-sale. So I think from an investment perspective, if you can get in earlier for these smaller units in the downtown core, we only have so much density. It really feels like we're maximizing that over the next 5 years. So I think there's a good buying potential there. I think for most people, getting onto the peninsula is a very good market to get into. I'll talk about Langford after, but the peninsula it's this kind of undervalued market to a certain degree, and Sydney as a city or municipality is growing exponentially. It was such a sleepy little town for really decades, and now there's all these new builds, new amenities, just a renewed interest for people, not even just as a retirement community, but to buy a house for the family, to buy income properties. People have a lot of income there that are wanting to retire out that area. So if you can buy a property that's rentable, you know, a couple blocks off of where those amenities are, I mean, the rental market, there's just nothing to choose from. So you can kind of see how that would be a good buy. Really out into the Western communities, you can get a townhouse for a reasonable price still nowadays, and that rental market is just growing exponentially as well. So historically, it was just the downtown core that had these kind of huge rents that you were seeing in other major cities. That's really creeping out towards these peripheral communities quite substantially. And so I think, you know, if you need the space to buy for yourself, those are the communities. But if you need the space to get top dollar on a rental project or to buy pre-sale, those are probably the communities you should be looking in.
Yeah, and one of the projects that I was taking a look at was that heritage building downtown where they had, you know, part of the structure remained, the brick exposure. Maybe you can remind me of the name, but did you have a chance of taking a look at that project?
It's funny. We've had quite a few of those in the downtown core, which I think is great.
Okay.
The municipality or the city needs to keep, you know, that history, but we need the modernization and the density. Some of the more expensive ones are, you know, right in that downtown core area, and I think people will pay a premium for those. There are a couple buildings, like Customs House is probably the example that you're thinking of, and it's one of the most high-end buildings that we have. I'll be honest, the price that people pay per square foot surprises me there compared to the rest of the city. But we have kind of 3 or 4 marquee buildings, that being one of them, where long-term investment, people want to have that retirement home here. They want to be able to park their money here and feel comfortable that they're in a quality project that is in an area that's completely developed. And so Customs House is a perfect example of that. It's on the harbor. They can't build anything around it. Those views are protected, and it's 1 in a million option. So I think a lot of people from overseas that are Canadian residents are thinking, I want to move back to Canada at a certain age. Where can I invest that I know is going to hold its value, but probably even extrapolate faster than the rest of the market? And that's one of those buildings for sure.
And taking a look at some of the different investment strategies that you're seeing in Victoria, people looking at, with UVic over 20,000 students, is student rentals popular in that area?
I went to UVic, and there was no rentals to choose from when I was there, 15 years ago. And it's fascinating because there is some purpose-built rentals that they've started to build. The Shelburne corridor, it's still just a drop in the bucket for what they need for UVic. Gordon Head that neighborhood has held a lot of those rentals and single family homes for, 4 or 5 different sets of students per house. But those are now being bought by people with families because it's one of the more affordable places that you can still get a decent sized lot. So that's really putting a push on those rental properties. And I think if you can find a rental there, it's honestly like printing money because you have your choice of who's going to rent it. They cannot build fast enough for that inventory. I mean, they would have to be building 300-400 units every year to make any kind of change, and they can really hardly build 100 or 200 units every year. We did see a big upswing the last couple of years, but every person I talk to, they're reaching out to buy something because their kids can't find a rental. And I know in the last couple of years there was upwards of like 2,000 kids who were promised rentals that didn't get them from the university. And so one September alone, I'm one of 1,500 realtors, and I had like 10 groups reach out trying to find the exact same rental for their kids. So I think that's always a safe bet. It's just actually finding the right inventory there is difficult, but if you can, I think it's a really great investment.
It's crazy competitive. It's kind of like a lottery system for some of these students to even get a chance of somewhere to live for their first year of residence as well. So, what is the bunny situation still a thing at UVic? Are the bunnies still hopping around?
No, they were corralled a couple of years ago, and I think that's not a popular conversation in Victoria. But UVic is one of those things. It's a great campus. I think it's just going to keep growing. They have great programming, great instructors. It's just the housing around it that I think is a great investment. And it's funny, most people coming to the university don't actually think that far ahead of, well, what is the housing scenario going to be like for my time at the university, which from an investor perspective is great because that pinch is just going to continue because it's a desirable university to come to.
Definitely. Sorry, I didn't mean to get political with the bunny comment there. If there's any viewers listening, with short-term rentals and they're growing in popularity for their aim for better cash flow, is that a strategy that's used within the greater Victoria market? Are there certain areas that have put up the red flag and said not in here? What does that look like over there?
The most popular market is obviously the downtown core. We only have less than 24 buildings that allow transient rentals. So anything built after 2018 doesn't allow it anymore. So really those units hold their value quite substantially. I used to live in a building actually that was transient zoned, and honestly, every unit there, I would say at least 75% occupancy all year round. And especially in the pandemic, people were choosing Victoria as a travel destination more often, and so it was probably even higher numbers than that. So those types of units, if you can get them, lots of investors are buying up 5, 10, 15, 20 in a building alone, because they know if it's a newer building, it's a safe investment, and that travel market isn't going anywhere for the city. Single family homes and getting outside of that, of like areas in their space. It's not super common to have an Airbnb outside the core. There's some municipalities like Langford who are pretty lackadaisical about all of their zoning requirements, and so they allow it. But really, if you're looking for that like strong investment, it's getting into one of those buildings, because there's no more inventory. People want a hotel alternative. The city's really pushing for less Airbnbs and more hotels. Nobody's built a hotel in quite a number of years. We've had one or two in the last decade. So that just goes to show that if you can get a 1 or 2 bedroom unit and start to collect a portfolio, it can be good.
And for maybe a potential investor, new resident, someone just looking to head to Victoria for a little vacation, what are some of your favorite parts about living in Victoria? Maybe a favorite restaurant, favorite hike, outdoor activity?
I think for say people moving here, we're really fortunate that we have all of these kind of satellite communities that have their we'll call it township core. So, Saanich is a big municipality, but within that, there's 6 or 7 areas like Cabro Bay Village, Broadmead Village, Cadova Bay. They all have like all the shopping, the restaurants, they're near the beaches, the parks, everything can be at your finger. You don't need a car. It's right there. And so it's very special in that regard. I haven't really gone to another city where you can drive 7 minutes and you're in another little community core. And so for living, that's and strap them to a specific area of the city. There's lots of different areas that are great options. I think the downtown core, we're fortunate that we haven't lost a ton of businesses in COVID. We've seen a little attrition with a couple restaurants, but it's an exciting city. I mean, I always tell the story. I never thought I would live in Victoria growing up here. I thought it was too small. I wanted the big city life. It's like, what do people do for excitement here? And really, in the last 20 years, we have, a great culinary landscape. We have exciting events that are coming here all the time. We have good concerts, we have good festivals. I think it's that tourism that's brought in by the cruise ships and just by our climate that's amazing. And then also the fact that you can be, in a 1,000-acre park within 15 minutes, or you can be at a beach, or you can be at the lake. It's like people from Vancouver love coming here, because if you want to go to the lake in Vancouver, how far are you driving for that? It's like in Victoria, you have 15 minutes. You're within like 3-4 very swimmable lakes that are beautiful in the summer, great hiking. So I think that lifestyle piece brings the tourists, but also, it's such a bonus for people that are choosing to live here.
Definitely. Great outdoor lifestyle, and as well as the amenity rich of all the concert venues and the arenas and the mountains and lakes. It's definitely a great place to call home. And if people did want to get in touch with you, Ryan, and wanted to learn more about what the Victoria market looks like, whether selling, buying, or investing over there, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Anyway, RyanCochrane.ca is the website, but I just love being an advocate for people in Victoria. I love this city. My entire family's here. It's nice to be able to say it's an amazing city and not, you're not blowing smoke at anybody. It is just a fantastic place to live. And I always love having the opportunity to work with new people.
Well, it's been a lot of fun hearing about your story as an Olympian into a realtor now, and the success that you've had within the industry, some of your favorite pockets of Victoria, as well as providing some different investing strategies for the audience to absorb. So we appreciate you carving out some time for us. It's been a lot of fun chatting with you, and look forward to reconnecting here soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Ryan.